Okay, these are the directional terms. So you have the superior or cranial, which is towards the end of the body. The inferior or cradle is away from the head. Anterior and ventral is the front. Posterior and dorsal is the back. The medial is towards the midline of the body. Lateral is away from the midline of the body, and proximal is toward or nearest the trunk or the point of origin of a part. Distal is away from or furthest from the trunk or the point or origin of a part. And then we have the body planes, and a plane is a 2D slice through 3D space, which can be thought of as a glass sheet. The anatomical planes are different lines used to divide the human body. You will commonly see them when looking at anatomical models and prosections using anatomical planes, which allows for an accurate description of a location and allows the reader to understand what a diagram or picture is trying to show. And these are the body planes. And the coronal plane is a vertical plane running from side to side and divides the body or any of its parts into anterior or posterior portions. And then we have the sagittal plane, which is a vertical plane running from front to back and divides the body of any of its parts into right or left sides. And then the axial plane or the transverse plane is a horizontal plane, and it divides the body or any of its parts into the upper and lower parts.
We have the body cavities. The body cavities, or spaces of the body, contain the internal organs. The two main cavities are called the ventral and dorsal cavities. The ventral is a large cavity and is subdivided into two parts by the diaphragm, a dome-shaped respiratory muscle. Thoracic cavity. The upper ventral thoracic or chest cavity contains the heart, lungs, trachea, esophagus, large blood vessels, and nerves. The thoracic cavity is bound laterally by the ribs and the diaphragm godly. Abdominal and pelvic cavity. The lower part of the ventral cavity can be further divided into two portions, abdominal portion and pelvic portion. The abdominal cavity contains most of the gastrointestinal tract as well as the kidneys and adrenal glands. The abdominal cavity is bound cranially by the diaphragm, laterally by the body wall, and caudally by the pelvic cavity. The pelvic cavity contains most of the urogenital system as well as the rectum. The pelvic cavity is bounded cranially by the abdominal cavity, dorsally by the sacrum, and laterally by the pelvis. Dorsal cavity. The smaller of the two main cavities is called the dorsal cavity. As its name implies, it contains organs lying more posterior in the body. The dorsal cavity, again, can be divided into two portions. The upper portion, or the cranial cavity, houses the brain, and the lower portion houses the spinal cord. Spinal cavity. Part of the dorsal cavity, the spinal cavity is formed by the backbone, which is the spine, and contains the spinal cord. The ventral cavity consists of two compartments, the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity, which are separated by their diaphragm.